The South China Sea had been quiet that morning, its waters calm and unbroken. But in a matter of seconds, everything changed. A Chinese Type 052D destroyer, normally cruising at a steady 18 knots, suddenly surged forward. Its engines roared as the ship accelerated to 30 knots in under 90 seconds. This was not a routine maneuver, nor was it the action of an inexperienced crew. It was an intentional order from Beijing itself: intercept the American warship and force it to back down. The target was the USS Princeton, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser armed with powerful Aegis radar and over 100 vertical launch cells. At the time, the Princeton was carrying out a lawful freedom of navigation patrol in international waters, more than 180 nautical miles away from Chinese territory. These patrols, conducted for decades, ensure that no single nation can claim ownership of global shipping lanes that carry trillions of dollars in trade. Yet this time, Beijing wanted to make a statement, and the destroyer's aggressive sprint was its message. On board the Princeton, radar operators quickly picked up the hostile maneuver. Their calculations showed the Chinese destroyer would enter weapons range in less than 15 minutes. The ship's threat level shifted from moderate to high, and alarms echoed through the corridors. Sailors rushed to their battle stations. This was no drill, but the American crew did not panic. Years of training had prepared them for this exact moment, the collision between provocation and principle. This wasn't just about defending one vessel. It was about upholding the right of all nations to navigate the seas freely. One wrong assumption could trigger disaster, but standing firm could prevent chaos. As the Chinese warship cut across the horizon, tension spread across the entire formation. From the skies above to the depths below, layers of American power began to move into position. The encounter was no longer about two ships. It had become a test of endurance, discipline, and global resolve. The Chinese destroyer cut across the waves with determination, its bow slicing the water like a blade. Its mission was crystal clear: challenge the U.S. Navy's presence, test its response, and pressure Washington into retreat. The order came directly from Beijing: force the Americans to yield without firing a shot. But the ship it approached was no ordinary target. The USS Princeton, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, was equipped with the Spy-1 radar system, capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously, and 122 vertical launch cells loaded with standard missiles. Every inch of its steel hull was designed for combat. Any miscalculation by the Chinese vessel could lead to instant destruction. Still, the maneuver was more than reckless bravado, it was political theater. Beijing wanted the world to see an American warship turning away. Instead, what followed was a textbook demonstration of U.S. naval superiority. As the destroyer pushed forward, the U.S. Navy raised the alert level across the nearby formation. The order flowed outward to the Nimitz carrier strike group, anchored by the USS Nimitz itself, one of the most powerful floating fortresses ever built. Within seconds, the Cooperative Engagement Capability, or CEC, was activated. This advanced digital network linked every ship and aircraft in the formation, allowing them to share radar and sensor data instantly. What one ship saw, all ships saw. What one radar tracked, every vessel could target. The Chinese destroyer, once speeding toward the Princeton alone, now faced the collective awareness of an entire strike group. It had walked into a trap without even realizing it. The USS Nimitz, flanked by its escorts, the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers USS Chung Hoon and USS Kidd, shifted formation into a protective ring. Each vessel slid seamlessly into position, creating a layered shield around the carrier. Decades of global deployments and relentless drills had refined this choreography into second nature. This wasn't improvisation. It was discipline forged through countless high-pressure scenarios. Inside the combat information centers, American officers calmly monitored the unfolding encounter. Fire control solutions were updated by the second. Surveillance systems recalibrated continuously. Flight decks buzzed with activity, but the atmosphere remained controlled, professional, and precise. The U.S. Navy was preparing for war, but not looking for it. Meanwhile, the Chinese destroyer closed the distance. From its bridge, commanders may have expected panic, perhaps a hasty retreat, or even a reckless shot fired in fear. But the Americans did not move. They stood firm, their ships holding formation, their sensors locked, their weapons ready but silent. This was not hesitation, it was strategy. The US Navy's doctrine has always been clear. Prepare for war, but do not fire the first shot unless absolutely necessary. To the world watching, the message was unmistakable. While Beijing relied on sudden aggression and risky proximity, the United States countered with predictability, structure, and overwhelming presence. On international maritime tracking systems, every American move was visible and deliberate. Transparency itself became a weapon showing the difference between authoritarian intimidation and professional restraint. The Chinese destroyer might have been fast, but it was outmatched by the calm precision of its opponent. Minute by minute, the confrontation escalated. The horizon filled with American steel. The air crackled with radar pulses and encrypted communications. It was a battle of nerves, and the US Navy was daring Beijing to take the next step. For nearly 7 hours, the standoff stretched on, tension rising with every passing mile. Yet, as the minutes dragged by, one truth became clear. The United States would not yield, and China was playing a dangerous game it could not win. As the tense naval standoff dragged on, Beijing decided to escalate. From the deck of the aircraft carrier Shandong, J-15 fighter jets screamed into the air, their engines straining as they launched from the ski jump ramp. To the untrained eye, it looked like a dramatic show of strength. But to any experienced observer, it revealed weakness. Unlike American carriers equipped with electromagnetic catapults, the Shandong relies on outdated ski jump technology. This forces J-15 second to launch with reduced fuel and lighter weapons loads. Each takeoff meant shorter range, limited flight time, and fewer missiles in the air. In modern warfare, those limitations are fatal. In contrast, American F/A-18 Super Hornets could launch fully armed, fly longer distances, and extend their missions with mid-air refueling. Supported by E-2D Hawkeye surveillance aircraft, they built a seamless picture of the skies above. What's more, the US Navy didn't just send fighters, it sent EA-18 Graham Growlers, specialized electronic warfare jets designed to blind enemy radars and scramble communications. China had nothing equivalent in the air. The disadvantages for Beijing multiplied. The J-15 itself was based on the aging Russian Su-33 design, heavy and fuel-hungry. Its engines were notorious for unreliability, and its maneuverability fell short against Western aircraft. American pilots, flying combat-tested Super Hornets with advanced APG-79 AESA radars, had every edge in detection, speed, and agility. Because of fuel constraints, Chinese pilots were forced to fly close together in tight formations. That decision, meant to conserve endurance, made them easier to track and even easier to target. From hundreds of miles away, US radars locked onto their signatures. In a real conflict, one well-placed missile could wipe out multiple jets at once. On board the American strike group, radar operators calmly tracked every movement. The Hawkeyes relayed data instantly through Link 16, ensuring that the Princeton, the Nimitz, and every escort ship had the same tactical picture. To the Chinese pilots, the sky might have seemed empty. In reality, they were being watched, measured, and boxed in from all directions. The more Beijing tried to project power, the more it exposed its limitations. The J-15 second could not remain in the air long enough to dominate. They could not approach without being detected. They could not maneuver freely without running out of fuel. Every second in the sky drained their advantage further. What began as an attempted show of strength quickly morphed into a quiet humiliation. For every Super Hornet cruising with confidence, a J-15 was struggling to stay airborne. For every American Growler jamming enemy signals, Chinese fighters flew unprotected, vulnerable from takeoff to landing. The battle for the skies was decided without a single missile fired. Presence alone told the story. The United States controlled the air, and China's fighter wing was already on the verge of collapse. The skies above the South China Sea were tense, but the real battle was not fought with missiles or dogfights. It was fought with invisible waves of energy, signals, noise, and digital deception. And in that domain, the United States held an overwhelming advantage. Flying alongside the Super Hornets, the EA-18 Graham Growlers switched on their ALQ-99 jamming pods. Instantly, Chinese radar screens lit up with chaos. Instead of clear images of American aircraft, operators saw ghost signals, false contacts, and flickering targets that seemed to vanish and reappear at random. The logic of their systems began to break down. For the Chinese pilots in their J-15 second, the confusion was even worse. They relied on ground-based radar support from Hainan Island, but those signals were now scrambled beyond recognition. When they looked to their instruments, the readings made little sense. Was that a Super Hornet closing in, or just another phantom created by the Growler's electronic storm? Meanwhile, the US forces were not blinded. Quite the opposite. Through the Link 16 network, every jet and every ship shared the same tactical picture. If a Hawkeye surveillance plane detected a target, that information was instantly relayed to the Princeton, the Nimitz, and every fighter in the air. The result was a unified digital battle space where no American unit ever flew blind. It was as if the entire carrier strike group had fused into one giant organism, seeing, hearing, and reacting as a single body. A threat spotted by one was instantly a threat targeted by all. This level of coordination left the Chinese forces utterly exposed. Analysts would later confirm that for several minutes, radar stations on Hainan Island were effectively disabled. Missiles were fired at false targets. Tracking systems locked onto phantom aircraft that never existed. By the time Chinese operators realized what had happened, it was already too late. Their ability to guide and protect their fighters had been stripped away. In stark contrast, US pilots maneuvered with complete confidence. They knew exactly where the enemy was, how fast they were burning fuel, and how vulnerable they had become. While Chinese forces scrambled to separate fact from fiction, the Americans used deception as a weapon, controlling the pace of the battle without firing a single round. This was more than electronic warfare, it was a display of dominance in the digital era. Where China sought to project power with noise and numbers, the United States countered with precision and information. In modern combat, data is as deadly as firepower, and America had both. The result was inevitable. China's vision of the battlefield blurred into useless static, while the US picture grew sharper with every passing second. Once again, the balance tipped. Without clear eyes in the sky, Beijing could not fight, could not lead, and could not win. While the skies turned against Beijing, an even more dangerous reality unfolded below the surface. Beneath the calm waters of the South China Sea, another contest was already underway, a battle of silence and stealth. And once again, China found itself outmatched. During a recent tracking exercise, a Chinese Type 039 diesel-electric submarine attempted to shadow US movements. At first, its crew believed they were hidden, gliding beneath the waves. But American sonar operators had already detected them. For more than an hour, US forces monitored every move of the submarine without losing contact. The Chinese crew made critical mistakes, turning too sharply, generating excess noise and exposing their position. In submarine warfare, noise is death. If this had been real combat, the outcome would have been swift and brutal. A Mark 48 torpedo, once locked on target, would need just 12 seconds to close the distance. There would have been no escape, no counterattack, only destruction. China's submarine fleet may be large, but its stealth technology lags decades behind. Against the United States' three-dimensional anti-submarine network, numbers offer no protection. From the air, P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft scan the depths with magnetic anomaly detectors. On the surface, Arleigh Burke-class destroyers deploy advanced sonar arrays and carry helicopters armed with torpedoes. And lurking in the depths, nuclear-powered attack submarines, silent, patient, and lethal prowl choke points like the Luzon Strait and Bashi Channel. Together, these layers form a deadly trap. Even if one sensor misses a target, another will find it. Once located, a submarine's chance of survival approaches zero. The sea becomes not a refuge, but a cage. The ultimate proof came when the USS Virginia, a nuclear-powered attack submarine, carried out a chilling maneuver. After operating undetected for 8 days in contested waters, It surfaced without warning just 6 nautical miles from China's prized carrier Shandong. No missiles were fired, none were needed. The message was louder than any explosion. We were here the entire time, and you never knew it. For Beijing, the humiliation was staggering. A vessel meant to symbolize Chinese naval pride had been stalked in its own backyard, and its defenses had failed to notice. If this had been war, the Shandong could have been sunk before it even launched its fighters. American dominance beneath the waves was undeniable. It wasn't about firepower, it was about invisibility, patience, and control. Naval power is not measured only by the ships that float on the surface, but by the threats an enemy never sees until it is too late. And in that hidden domain, the United States Navy reigned supreme. For nearly 7 hours, the standoff had raged across sea and sky. Yet as the hours wore on, it became clear which side held the advantage. China's fleet, boxed in and overwhelmed, began to falter. In the air, J-15 fighters strained to stay aloft. Their limited fuel reserves drained quickly under constant radar lock from American systems. One by one, they were forced to break formation and return to the Shandong in emergency conditions low on fuel. Barely combat ready, there had been no dogfights, no missiles exchanged. But the invisible battle of endurance was decisive. China's air power blinked first. At sea, the situation was no better. The Princeton, the Nimitz, and their escorts maintained formation with unwavering discipline. Every Chinese radar ping, every maneuver, was tracked and countered. American aircraft patrolled the skies overhead. Submarines stalked silently below, and destroyers sealed the perimeter. The Chinese ships were contained, outmaneuvered, and stripped of initiative. Then, without warning, came the short and telling signal: end of exercise. Officially, it was presented as a planned conclusion, but observers noted the truth. It was an exit strategy, a quiet retreat from a confrontation Beijing no longer controlled. The mighty display of Chinese naval power ended not with fire, but with silence. And that silence spoke volumes. The United States had not fired a single missile, yet achieved complete dominance. Its strategy was restraint, not escalation; precision, not chaos. By relying on structure, training, and technology, the Navy had defended freedom of navigation and reminded the world of its unmatched reach. For China, the encounter was more than a tactical failure. It was a strategic embarrassment. Despite years of investment in warships, propaganda, and regional posturing, its forces had crumbled under sustained pressure. Their fighters burned out, their fleet lost control, their submarines were exposed. The lesson was clear. Raw numbers and bold gestures cannot substitute for discipline, coordination, and true technological superiority. The world was watching, and it did not miss the message. When the United States Navy arrives in force, it does not need to shout. Its silence is often louder than a missile launch. From sky to seabed, America had proven once again that it commands not only the oceans, but the very structure of international order. And so, the confrontation ended with China's retreat. But the deeper lesson endures. In high-stakes conflict, victory does not always belong to the side that strikes first. It belongs to the side that holds steady, that waits, that endures, and then reminds its rival that true power is measured not in aggression, but in control.